Well, good morning to you. It is the Nikki Maduro show. And of course, Nikki is off in the city doing the big radio show. But I'm here, Kim McAllister in for Nikki Maduro today. And it's going to be a good show. We've got John Rothmann on tap to talk politics and other stuff. So we'll do that. And also, Tim Sika will be along to talk movies on this Friday on the Nikki Maduro show. I do want to congratulate again Janet, who won the 49ers cooler yesterday in the big raffle, and Tony from San Antonio, who won the 2 KGO wine glasses. So thank you to everyone who participated in that. Super fun, and we appreciate the continued support of the Nikki Maduro show very much. Please click like and subscribe while you're thinking of it. If you haven't subscribed, we appreciate that because it helps us grow the show, and it's really kind. I've seen people sharing the show recently, and that makes me very happy when I see that. So thank you for that. We're going into Super Bowl weekend, and Nikki may not be here, but she's the queen of the 49ers. So before we bring on John Rothmann, I wanted to mention this story because in case of, I don't know, we'll just say a 49ers win or whatever happens, there's always worries of, I don't want to say rioting, but I don't know, roughhousing and cars being lit ablaze or people going crazy after such a win, right? Well, the San Francisco Police Department is now advising people who may be traveling into San Francisco on Super Bowl Sunday that there's some lane closures and there's also some muni closures because they're preparing ahead of time. They are working with other city, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to ensure safety before, during, and after the game. So they're going to close down a bunch of off-ramps. You won't be able to get into parts of San Francisco, including the Cesar Chavez off-ramp from South 101 and North 101 closed. The North 101 Mission exit closed. 280 north and southbound at Geneva and also North 280 at San Jose, they're going to close down the exit ramps. They don't want you to come into certain parts of San Francisco. The police say you are warned not to drive while intoxicated. Win or lose, they say you're encouraged to behave in the aftermath of the game, that people should be free to celebrate and support the team, but San Francisco police won't tolerate violence, property destruction, or other criminal activity. It's interesting because once I was sent out to cover the mayhem after the Giants won a World Series, and it's crazy how people they pour out of bars and they're inebriated, and I saw people climbing on top of buses and pushing over vehicles, and it gets pretty crazy. So, I like to see the police getting ahead of it. That's good, right? We'll take it. Did you hear the story about the 49ers spy cam? I think every place I've ever worked, there's been a rumor, right, that the boss is listening in on the microphone, or they somehow have you cameraed up and they're watching everything you do, and you better be careful, better be on your best behavior. Well, apparently 49ers, they make no bones about, there is a camera everywhere. So it started apparently with Bill Walsh, and he used to film his own teaching sessions to help speed up the learning process for coaches and for players as well. When Mike Shanahan joined the 49ers, apparently in 1992 as offensive coordinator, he took that idea and then pushed it a little bit further, recording the position meetings and then setting up a live feed back to the head coach's office so that he could listen in real time. And that spread, apparently. And now I guess they still do it. And players say, it's like the voice of God in some of these meetings. So they're all recorded. I find that a little bit creepy. But hey, if you know what's going on, then you're warned. The problem with it, though, is do you feel like you can be yourself in a meeting if you're so nervous that you don't know who else is listening in? I guess it's like radio, right? If you don't mean to say it, then don't say it. Let's bring in John Rothmann. Let's see if he heard those rumors at KGO as well. Good morning, my friend.
Yes, I did. I didn't change my demeanor one bit.
No, No, I mean, you're going to say what you're going to say, right? I mean, just don't say anything you don't want anyone to hear that. And really, with a microphone in front of you, you shouldn't be saying anything you don't want people to hear, right?
Gee, I can think of a lot of politicians who should have followed that advice.
Exactly. Well, good morning, everybody. Look at who's with me here. John Rothmann on this Friday on the Nikki Maduro show. And what we have, nothing to talk about? Oh,
No,
wait a
nothing,
minute.
Nothing.
We have a lot to talk about.
Nice seeing you, Kim. Bye.
Nice. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for stopping through. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so this report is released yesterday. Robert Hur, who is the special counsel assigned to investigate the documents that were found on the property of President Biden. The documents apparently were from his vice presidential days, but there were some documents marked classified and some marked top secret. He, the moment they were found, cooperates and gives them back, right? Cooperates with the whole investigation, opens up his house and properties and says, you know what? Come on in, search everything, right? It's a lot different than what we saw with the Trump documents case, where there was evidence allegedly to move boxes and hide things from people, where there was flopping around of documents, you're not supposed to see these, right, type of thing. It's just a whole different scenario. And so I've heard people say that because the special counsel yesterday decided in this report not to have President Biden face any charges, that there are people that say, oh, see, that's a two-tiered system of justice. See how it's different for Democrats and people in power than it is for Trump, and that shows that there's some type of difference. I would argue the cases are completely different. But in this report, John, as you likely know, the special counsel, Mr. Hur, pinpoints the president's memory and says he's not going to charge him because it would look like an old man who just can't remember stuff. And a jury wouldn't be inclined to prosecute an old fella who just has memory issues. He even goes so far as to say that the president is having trouble remembering when his son died. Well, that did not go well with President Biden, who gave a press conference of his own last night. And I wanted to play the video for you so that you could, we'll start our conversation after hearing from the president.
I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented, I wear since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of... Every Memorial Day we hold a service remembering him, attended by friends and family and the people who loved him. I don't need anyone to remind me when he passed away or if he passed away. Simple truth is I sat for a 5-hour interview over 2 days of events going back 40 years. At the same time I was managing international crisis, their task was to make a decision about whether to move forward with charges in this case. That's their decision to make. That's the counsel's decision to make. That's his job. And they decided not to move forward. For any extraneous commentary, they don't know what they're talking about. It has no place in this report. The bottom line is the matter is now closed. I'm going to continue what I've always focused on, my job of being President of the United States of America.
Yeah. And it goes on a bit with then reporters shouting questions at him. He can't quite get the answers out as quickly. And there are some that say that whole episode made it worse, made the whole question of, is he having memory issues? Is he too old to be president? Basically the only thing we can pick on him for, right, made it worse. What do you think?
Let's separate two issues.
Okay.
First of all, it is very different than what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump obfuscated, attempted to conceal, did not respond to the demands of his turning over documents. And we saw the evidence of that. What Donald Trump did was a disgrace. and he is going to be held accountable for that one way or the other. There is no equivalency with what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden was very upfront. He said his staff did all the packing for him. He didn't even realize where a lot of the stuff was. He thought it was supposed to go to the archives. But the most significant aspect, as you have pointed out, and correctly, is the question of Joe Biden's cognitive awareness. Yeah. Let me be clear. He did confuse the president of Mexico and the president of Egypt. But of course, Donald Trump confused Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. We have two guys who are, well, I like to point out, Kim, this may be the last presidential campaign where both candidates for president were older than I am.
Yeah.
And
you know what? Take the wins where you can get them, John Rothmann. That's what you do. Good.
But that is a concern the American people should have. I worked on a campaign years ago where the slogan was old enough to know, young enough to do. And the question with Joe Biden is he is old enough to know, but is he able to do? Is he encumbered by his age? And that will be the question which the American people will have to answer. But it applies to both of them. So my sense is that Joe Biden is going to be fighting a defensive campaign. I love right-wing radio. I suffer from low blood pressure, and so I watch right-wing television and radio. They were going after Joe Biden for confusing the president of Egypt and the president of Mexico, but they didn't say a word about Donald Trump confusing Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. Not. It's a complete hypocrisy. So what does it all boil down to? What's the end result? The end result is that the American people are going to have to choose between two guys in their 80s, which one should be president, if in fact Donald Trump is the nominee of the party. And somebody asked me the question yesterday, what if Joe Biden withdraws? Well, the answer is that Joe Biden is racking up delegates. Super Tuesday is March 5th, and you and I will be talking around that time. And Joe Biden is going to have the delegates, and Donald Trump is going to have the delegates. He won overwhelmingly in the caucuses in Nevada, where the delegates are rewarded. And so my expectation is that these two individuals will be the nominees of their party. And then the real question will be, who is the vice presidential nominee? Because if you look at actuary tables and you deal with people over the age of 80, the odds of their surviving a full term as president are very, very limited, which means that we are going to have to focus on the vice presidential nominees. I listened yesterday to Elise Stefanik, who is one of the leading potential nominees for vice president. She's number 3 Republican in the House of Representatives. She took Liz Cheney's place as head of the Republican conference. And she defended Donald Trump. In fact, when she was asked point blank if she were vice president, and instead of Mike Pence, if she had been vice president, how would she have ruled on the question of sending the electoral votes back to the states? She supported Donald Trump's position.
Really scary.
One of the things that we have to do, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, is we're going to have to focus in on the vice presidential candidates. I often tell the story about the mother who had 2 sons. One went to sea, the other became vice president, and neither one was ever heard from again. Mm-hmm. We're going to be hearing a lot about the nominees for vice president.
I was watching last night, or looking at a report last night from Huffington Post, and they interviewed this former prosecutor, federal prosecutor, who looked at the report issued by Mr. Hur and said, this is entirely inappropriate. You could say there's no case here to file charges. You could say it doesn't rise to the level. You could say a bunch of different things, but why you would come out and say memory issues, doesn't remember when his son passed away, all these things, why would you attack him in this particular way?
Mr. Hur is a Republican.
In a report like this, right. And so it becomes then, instead of a legitimate investigation and decision, it becomes more of a political hit piece.
You're exactly right.
So Andrew Weissman was speaking on MSNBC. He's called this report from Mr. Hur entirely inappropriate, irrelevant, and gratuitous. He said it's exactly what you're not supposed to do, which is putting your thumb on the scale that could have political repercussions.
He made what should have been an objective report.
Yeah.
He made what should have been an objective report and was an objective report, exonerating Joe Biden from having done anything that was criminally prosecutable, and instead made a political question of the mental competency of the President of the United States. I looked up Mr. Hur online to find out what his background is. He doesn't have a degree in psychology or psychiatry or medicine, and he is a Republican. And it's interesting. Merrick Garland put him in the position, and Merrick Garland certainly cannot be accused of being a Republican. Merrick Garland put him in this position, believing he would give a fair and objective view. I'm sure Merrick Garland is furious at it. But this is politics. And may I assure you, in 2024, we are going to have a lot of politics. I notice you have my website up, Around the Political World with John Rothmann. I don't have to worry, Kim. In fact, I only
you always have fodder.
and that's what makes a political year so interesting. But I was deeply disturbed by the fact that was the emphasis, if you will, on Joe Biden's cognitive ability rather than the exoneration of any criminal wrongdoing.
And that's all it needed to be. That's what he says, Weissman, my apologies. He says the appropriate thing to do there is just say, we're declining. There's insufficient proof. It's not a time to have a press conference to state, oh, by the way, let me give you my personal views.
Yeah, he's right. Absolutely
unprofessional, right?
But let me again assure you, this will be fodder for the Republicans. They are going to use it. I listened last night to Sean Hannity, who made a big deal about it. Yeah. And Mark Levin, no doubt, will do the same. They're all going to do it. It's part of that process, which leaves the country even more divided. And by the way, there is no equivalency between what Donald Trump did and what Joe Biden did in terms of documents. There's just no analogy, because we know, well, interesting, Joe Biden did say he thought those papers had gone to the National Archives. Turned out they went to his home in Delaware. But the simple truth is Donald Trump obfuscated. He tried to prevent people from knowing where it was. I can't explain it to you except to say, sadly, this will not be dealt with objectively. It will be a partisan question, and it's going to ring all the way down to the November election.
Which is really too bad, because it didn't have to be that way. But this kind of added fuel to the fire. So on your blood pressure watching show, Fox, they interviewed Jason Miller, who's this longtime former advisor to former President Trump. And he is the one who comes out and says, see, it's a two-tiered system of justice. So he's on The Hill on News Nation, as well as other programs last night, trying to talk about this case. He says it shows that there's very clearly a two-tiered system of justice. There's a selective prosecution game that is going on. Is that what it looks like to you?
No, but that's what it looks like to Donald Trump, who, by the way, said the same thing in his statement last night. Look, that is their line. There is a two-tiered system of justice.
Right.
But let me explain to you. Joe Biden has not weaponized the Justice Department. If the Justice Department were weaponized, this report would never have seen the light of day.
Right.
The simple truth is there is only one candidate for president who has talked publicly about weaponizing the Justice Department, and that is Donald Trump, who has made clear that's precisely what he'll do. So you have to take all of this into account and understand this is a highly partisan moment. And let me explain. I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I'm a great critic of Donald Trump. I'm horrified at the thought he could be president of the United States. Right. But when you interview me, you're going to get an objective response. The objective response is there is no analogy between Trump and Biden, that the Justice Department clearly is not weaponized, or this report would never have seen the light of day. It would have been buried because it supported the position on Trump. And so, but may I say, Kim, and I used to say this on the air all the time, don't confuse people with the facts. But at the same time, I don't want this to end without my being clear. The fact that we have two 80-year-olds running for president of the United States is a very serious consideration. I'm not in favor of an age limit. I never have been, nor am I in favor of term limits. But these factors need to be taken into account. The president of the United States, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, is in the most critical position in the world in terms of power. And you want to make sure the person who is there is fully competent, fully cognizant, fully aware. What does this mean for the Democrats? let me tell you, the Democrats are scurrying right now because they've got a problem. They're committed to Joe Biden. They like Joe Biden. They believe his policies have been great. The question is, can Joe Biden carry the election? Will the accusation, not proof positive, but the accusation of cognitive difficulties play a factor in the election? And the same thing would apply with Donald Trump. But, you know, we're not dealing in a normal situation. But I do want to point out to people, it's early on. 2024 has a long way to go. We don't have a Republican convention till July, a Democratic convention till August. And that means there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate between now and those two events.
Something you said earlier sticks out to me as we talk about this. And you said these candidates, both of them, are rolling along, collecting all these votes in primaries and caucuses and what have you, and that we do have a long way to go. So what happens if one of them begs out for whatever reason? And then you are, as you say, left with a choice of who you thought might be a presidential candidate stepping forward to take the lead role. Do all those votes in primaries just go away, or do they transfer to the next person, or does it not matter? How does it all work out?
Oh, I love you. Kim, this is the most important single question. And it's, of course, a matter of speculation as to what will happen. But let me paint the scenarios for you. First of all, we once had a vice presidential candidate by the name of Tom Eagleton, who, after he was nominated by the convention, withdrew as a candidate. And you may recall the Democratic National Committee met and chose Sargent Shriver to be the nominee. George McGovern, who was the presidential nominee, said he wanted Sargent Shriver, and that's who he got. So the power of a national committee is critical. And let me just hastily point out that Romney McDaniel, who, you know, Trump hates the name Romney, so it's now Ronna McDaniel. They leave out Romney. She is the outgoing chair of the Republican Party because Donald Trump has decided to dismiss her. But let's take this a step further. What happens if a candidate wins delegates and then is disabled in some way, or, as was the case of Robert Kennedy in 1968, is assassinated? The delegates pledged to Robert Kennedy in 68 met in Chicago, the site of the Democratic National Convention, and voted as a bloc to transfer their delegates to George McGovern. McGovern was not the Democratic nominee in 68. He was the Democratic nominee in 72. But the point is, the delegates you elect are elected regardless. And so they then have a decision to make. Now, why is it that we have now seen the remarkable aspect of Ron DeSantis suspending his campaign rather than withdrawing? Because if you're a suspended candidate, you can jump back in. And if Nikki Haley loses as badly as the polls indicate in South Carolina, by 20 points or more, she too would then have the probability, I think, of suspending her campaign. She won't be able to raise money to sustain a campaign. But that means they are still viable candidates. But here's the next question. What happens if there is no potential nominee? Could you have an open convention? That is to say, could somebody jump in at the last minute, as Adlai Stevenson did in 52 or Wendell Willkie in 1940? And the answer is highly unlikely. You have to have a block of delegates. There are no more favorite sons. There are no more uncommitted delegates who you can go out and try to woo. So I think the odds of an open convention are extremely limited, but it means the power of the national committees and the party leaders is going to be even more compelling. All bets are off. I was just asked if I would give a speech on July the 16th in the middle of the Republican convention. And I immediately said, you bet I'll do it, because who knows where we'll be on July 16th.
Right.
So I say this respectfully, but this is a difference in the American political process.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, conventions meant something. Yeah. Once upon a time, if you were a delegate to a convention, it really meant something. We have not had a convention that was really contested since, Republicans in 76 with Ford and Reagan, and the Democrats in 1980 between Kennedy and Carter. These conventions are no longer conventions as we knew them traditionally, when you really had horse trading, when you could have a dark horse candidate emerge from nowhere, where you could have a midnight meeting in a smoke-filled room and choose a candidate. It doesn't work that way anymore, but it presents all kinds of possibilities. Let me also indicate just very quickly, remember the vice presidential candidate is named by the presidential candidate. And the question arose, what happens if a presidential candidate withdraws or is disabled and you have a vice presidential nominee? Does the vice presidential candidate automatically become the candidate for president? Not necessarily. If Joe Biden in September all of a sudden can't run, the Democratic National Committee would have to select somebody. The odds are to be Kamala Harris. And if the same thing should happen with Donald Trump, the Republican National Committee would have to meet and name a candidate because you don't recall the conventions. So for a political junkie like me and someone who really is a student of American politics, I love these kinds of questions. And what you've asked may be the most important single question of 2024.
Well, let's see how it shakes out. Speaking of these primaries, yesterday we had Nevada, right, where Trump is victorious. So
in the caucuses.
Yeah, in the caucuses. They're saying it's a great day for him because not only was he given this gift of the huge question mark of cognitive abilities of President Biden, but he's also given a win in Nevada. Do these races that aren't really being paid that much attention to matter?
Yes, because you accumulate delegates.
Yeah.
And once you've reached the point where you have enough delegates to win, it's over. There's no more contest, which is what happened essentially to Ford and Reagan and Kennedy and Carter. You could see where the delegate trend was. So these delegates are critical. And I know we will be talking again after March 5th. March 5th is Super Tuesday. 1/3 of the delegates are going to be selected on March 5th. And that is going to be incredible. And of course, in less than 3 weeks, the South Carolina primary takes place.
Yeah.
And that will be the real moment. And all the predictions are that Trump will sweep it. But here's another question for you. What happens if Donald Trump ceases to have the lock on the nomination? Will his endorsement of somebody else mean something? There are a million variables because this is not like the old days where you understood what a convention meant. I have books about conventions. I love them. There's a wonderful book called The Unchosen, which describes the battle that took place at conventions. We don't have that anymore. I was lucky, Kim. I attended the 1964 Republican convention here in San Francisco. And although Goldwater won the nomination, there was a battle over could he be stopped? How could you stop him? It was an exciting convention. Conventions today are photo ops.
Yeah.
They're not substantive anymore. And remember, it was so bad that in 2020 rather, the Republican Party didn't even write a platform. They simply said, we accept what we did 4 years ago in 2016, and whatever Donald Trump wants, that's our platform. That's not what a political party should be. I remember the debates that took place, particularly over the war in Vietnam at the Democratic National Convention of 1968. It was one of the most powerful, dramatic moments. Or in 1964, when the Republicans debated the question of extremism and civil rights. I mean, the whole point of a convention was to have a dynamic in which people could be heard and in which you could debate great issues. Yeah. Now, platform committees are cut and dried. And the platform, frankly, I have a book of political party platforms, and I want you to know when I have trouble sleeping, I just open it up and read it because
of course, why not?
Mean nothing.
That'll put you right to sleep. Let me switch gears here and talk to you about what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court. And there's indication, according to those in the know, that the Supreme Court it might side with former President Trump on the issue of whether or not he's eligible to be on the ballot. What, rises to the level of an insurrection. And how do you figure out if somebody was the insurrectionist or not, or gave aid and comfort to insurrectionists? It seems clear to me. It seems cut and dried to me. It seems like a rule in the Constitution that must be followed. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen that way. Yeah. What were your thoughts coming out of that?
First of all, Donald Trump has not been convicted of insurrection. He hasn't even been accused in a court of law of insurrection.
But you don't need to be in this 14th Amendment.
I understand.
Yeah.
But understand that from the point of view of Donald Trump and his people, they are saying, I didn't participate in an insurrection. One of the things the Supreme Court did, and they did at the very end yesterday, there was a discussion about the meaning of the term insurrection. The Supreme Court doesn't want to interfere in the presidential election in this way. Do you remember the last time the Supreme Court interfered directly in a presidential election was in 2000?
Yeah, we
Bush
ended
v.
up
Gore.
with President Bush, right? Yeah.
No, but more than that,
Yeah.
I can tell you, as a talk show host on KGO, after that decision came from the Supreme Court until the night of September 10th, the only thing we talked about was the question of who really won the election. Once the attack took place on September the 11th, Bush v. Gore, question of who was really president, vanished. But the Supreme Court was very badly burned. And remember, only one member of the court who was there in 2000 is still on the court, and that's Clarence Thomas. Let me make clear that Clarence Thomas has said he will not recuse himself in this case dealing with Donald Trump. And the real question to me, and I want everyone to understand this, and I've said it repeatedly, and I'm going to say it again. The issue is not whether he's removed from the ballot. The court will not remove him from the ballot. I never thought they would, even if there were grounds. The question that the court is going to consider next is the question of presidential immunity.
Yeah.
Does Donald Trump have blanket immunity for everything he did during his time in the White House? Now, let me point out to you, Richard Nixon in the David Frost interviews, and you may want to bring that up one of these days just so people can hear it. Nixon said to David Frost when he was asked about the president and breaking the law, and what Nixon said was, if the president does it, it's not against the law. In other words, that the president was above the law.
No.
One of the things that the Supreme Court is going to have to do is wrestle with the question of whether Donald Trump is above the law. And if they go along with precedent, which this court doesn't necessarily do, as we learned in Roe v. Wade, if precedent matters, the United States versus Richard Nixon would give us the clue that no one is above the law. But I can tell you that Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, the odds are they'll vote that Trump isn't going to be held responsible. I think that this is the real question, because if he has immunity for everything he did when he was president, it's not just Donald Trump, it's future presidents as well.
Yep.
It would set a precedent that is very dangerous, and by the way, would affect Mr. Smith's cases as well. Because if Donald Trump is not responsible for what he did as president, if the court would rule that, then all the other cases are superfluous. So that is the case I am watching with particular care and interest.
I mean, I'm watching them both. And the indications are that they will side with Trump on the Colorado ballot case and not with him on the presidential immunity case.
Exactly. And so you
could be
split
heard
the
as early
difference.
as next week, I should say.
Right. So you split the difference. So the
Yeah.
court can then say, see, we're not political. We ruled in favor of one, but against him on another. And that may be what Chief Justice Roberts does to steer through these treacherous waters of the political controversy surrounding the court.
I have to take a moment to wish a happy birthday to one of our beloved chat members, Anonymous, who says, it's my birthday and I'm living it up. So happy birthday, Anonymous. Thanks for being here on your birthday and spending your time with us.
I think that's perfectly grand.
Wonderful. All right, let us move now to what is going on with Tucker Carlson and interviewing Vladimir Putin. How does this play out? He says, well, I'm here because we don't get the real story, and no American journalist goes, to Russia to interview. We only hear what the propaganda that we want to hear. Let's hear from the horse's mouth. But you know what it is? It seems like is a 2-hour-long opportunity to spread propaganda that's not true.
I listened to much of it, not all of it, I have to confess. And you will note that Tucker Carlson did not actively participate, that it was Vladimir Putin's forum to say really what he wanted.
Right.
Look, Tucker Carlson is not a journalist. Tucker Carlson has defended Russia, even in terms of what has happened in Ukraine.
Yeah.
He has become the Walter Duranty, if you will, or the Lord Haw-Haw of where we are today. Two journalists, one who worked with the Russians, the other worked with the Nazis. And all I can say to you is I've never respected Tucker Carlson. and I don't respect him at all. But if I were Vladimir Putin, I would be very happy. He had a shot with a journalist, so-called, who has a reputation here in the United States, and who they believe, that is, the Russians believe, will carry great weight in helping to ensure the defeat of Donald Trump, rather of Joe Biden, and the election of Donald Trump. So these are all issues, Kim, that are shameful. And I do compare Tucker Carlson to journalists in the past who have basically sold out. Yeah. I can't explain Tucker Carlson. I've never liked him. I've never agreed with him. I find him reprehensible in so many ways, but he has a forum. Fortunately, it's not on Fox anymore. So if you want to hear him, you have to find his network, if you will. Yeah. But look, Fox has suffered severely because although Tucker Carlson was their number one, now that he's gone, well, look at Jesse Waters. I mean, it's pathetic in that hour, because what does Jesse Waters do? He defends Donald Trump down the line. So Fox is not a news station. No. And Tucker Carlson was let go only because management understood that he had compromised himself on so many different levels. So
it gets worse, because you have this, I don't want to say faction, but you have this group of far, far, far right, maybe even, so far right that they've left the Republican Party far right. And these are people who seem to be in favor of, not giving money to Ukraine, seem to be, I don't know, I guess I want to say backing Putin, it seems like almost. It's hard to say that Americans would, but this is this growing far right faction. And so you bring this propaganda, this information to that group of Americans, and it becomes a little more dangerous for them.
Look at Speaker Johnson, a man who never should have been Speaker of the House of Representatives, who I have to tell you is an absolute disgrace. Mm-hmm. I don't know him personally. I've never met him. I believe he has an ideology that is antithetical to Republican principles, and you saw the chaos that descended on the House of Representatives and the United States Senate for two reasons. One, because of Donald Trump and his whole issue with the border compromise, which should have been a piece of cake for the Republicans. But number two, look at Speaker Johnson. This man has no control. They wanted to impeach Mr. Mayorkas. Okay. And what happened? It failed by a vote. And it will probably fail again in the future. But the point is, even if it passed the House, the first impeachment of a cabinet officer since the Grant administration in 1876, when the Secretary of War was impeached but not convicted, it's just a disgrace. And if I were setting up the Democratic National Campaign, I'd be doing what Harry Truman did in 1948. I'd be running against that good-for-nothing Republican Congress. Pure and simple. So oh, by the way, one other quickie thought. I just want to throw this out.
Sure.
If Ukraine goes down the tubes, when the history is written, great blame will be placed on the Republican Party and on Donald Trump and on Speaker Johnson.
Well, we know that Carlson says, listen, no Western journalists even try to interview Trump. Try to interview Putin. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. He says, you need to get both sides of the story. We need to hear from him. You need to hear his story. Christie on Amanpour, who I would argue is a real journalist, says, no. Does Tucker Carlson really think that Western journalists haven't been trying to interview Putin every day since his full-scale invasion of Ukraine? She said, it's absurd. We continue to ask for an interview just as we have for years. But Putin doesn't want to talk to somebody like Christie on Amanpour. He wants to talk to somebody like Tucker Carlson, who's going to be just sit there and go, yep,
It's a softball interview, of course.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I understand the Russian position. The Russians were invaded 3 times in the 20th century. They want a buffer, and they view NATO as a threat, an existential threat to their security. Under Putin, that was not the case under Yeltsin, for instance. So it depends very much. Russia ruled by Tsar or Commissar or Putin. does have a reason to be slightly paranoid
Yeah.
about the outside world. I understand that. But the invasion of Ukraine is inexcusable. And I must tell you, thank God for the Europeans. Thank God for NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I don't know if I've told you this story, but in 1951, the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO was Dwight Eisenhower. And Eisenhower was enjoying his job. He didn't want to run for president. And he came back to Washington and he had dinner with Bob Taft, who was the leading Republican in the United States Senate and the leading candidate for the presidential nomination in 1952. And Taft was an isolationist. And he said, if I'm elected president next year, we're going to pull out of NATO. And Eisenhower at that moment decided he would run for the presidency, not because he wanted the presidency, but because he wanted to make sure America was engaged in the world and that Bob Taft was never president of the United States. That's what the Republican Party needs to have today.
Yeah.
They need to have someone like a Dwight Eisenhower who will stand up and just say no to Donald Trump, who has assured us that if he's elected president, he's going to withdraw from NATO. Can you imagine the domino effect among our allies in Europe if we withdraw from NATO? Can you imagine what a green light that would be to Putin to go after Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, to go after Hungary, perhaps?
So scary.
Slovakia? I mean, this is, and by the way, who is Trump's hero? Orban, the president of Hungary, who is a despicable dictator. So all of these things play in to where the Republican Party has to stand. I think that Tucker Carlson is an indication of a severe problem on the far right. But remember, the Republican Party has always wrestled with its isolationist wing versus the internationalist wing. One other quick point, you know that on his short list for the vice presidential nomination, Donald Trump has mentioned Tucker Carlson. So what does that tell you, for heaven's sake?
Speaking of what the Republican Party has to do, I feel like a story I saw yesterday regarding Christie rises to what you're talking about here. He said on the Biden-Trump rematch potential, I'm not voting for Trump under any circumstances, which made me think either, number one, it's selfish because he's putting himself and his personal vendetta with Trump over his party, or it's selfless because regardless of his party, he's looking at the bigger picture of the United States. So he goes on to The View, the talk show The View, and he says he's really no fan of either of the choices for president in 2024. He said, we have two awful choices here in my view. The only thing he said that I will commit to is I am not voting for Trump under any circumstances, ever. He hasn't endorsed a candidate for the 2024 race yet, but he says, he's keeping the door open to third-party support. But he's even talked to the people have been floating his name to run for the no labels party.
No labels group,
But I don't know. I was kind of thinking about what that means and what his statement about I will not vote for Trump ever. And does that mean that he's kicking the Republican Party and their policies in the teeth? Or is that what we need from more Republicans to stand up on moral grounds and say, this is not the kind of candidate we need or want?
I'm not a fan of Chris Christie, but he's absolutely right. I would never vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And that case has to be made. Chris Christie in 2016 wanted the vice presidential nomination, and he didn't get it. And then I think he really angled for a major spot in the Trump administration. He didn't get that either. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a certain measure of bitterness. But whatever his motivation, whatever his reason, and I can't explain his reason, I can only tell you, thank God he has the courage to stand up and just say no to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That to me is the quintessential issue. And here's the real rub. What will Republicans do? Let me ask you, what will Mike Pence do? Former Vice President of the United States, a man who has not forgotten the shout, hang Mike Pence, and the fact that Donald Trump did not speak up for his vice president. Will Mike Pence support Donald Trump for president of the United States? And what about the other Republicans, including, I might add, the last viable potential nominee, the former governor of South Carolina? She has said such critical things of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. But then she says, but she's going to stick with the Republican Party. I find that to be an interesting paradoxical situation.
Right.
Let me quickly say about a third party. A third party can't win. The last third party to win was Abraham Lincoln in 1860. Third parties can spoil, as we have seen in previous elections, particularly in 2000 with Nader and Buchanan in Florida. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think a no labels party or a third party or a Robert Kennedy independent candidacy will make any difference. You have to stop and think. Just when we talk about elections, each state has different laws to get on the ballot.
Yeah.
You have to get on the ballot in the states in order to be qualified for electoral votes. So I don't think a third party has any chance at all of winning the presidency.
I have seen polls come out this year, though, that indicate that voters are not happy with either choice. And so if you have a peculiar election year where your two top candidates are meh, then maybe it opens up that field and cracks it open finally.
How do you get on the ballot?
Yeah.
Do you know what it takes to get on a ballot in a state? You have to be organized. You have to have signatures. You have to conform to state laws which vary with each and every state. George Wallace, when he ran in 68, spent an inordinate amount of time 2 years before the election to qualify in each state.
Oh, wow.
And he's the last one who qualified in all 50 states, who's a third party candidate for president. I just don't see a path for that. Even if you're unhappy, the challenges take place pre-convention. And if you can win a party nomination, then you're on the ballot. Otherwise, you're not. We are locked in, rightly or wrongly, to a two-party system in this country. I have been thinking about teaching a class based on the question of the two-party system. Why? Two defeated candidates for president, one a Democrat, the other a Republican, gave a series of lectures on this question. John W. Davis, who ran for the Democrats in 1924, and Tom Dewey, who ran for the Republicans in 44 and 48, both gave independent lectures on the importance of the two-party system in America. Whether we like it or not, that is the vehicle through which you get on the ballot. You know why Donald Trump is a Republican? Because he chose to hijack the Republican Party to get on the ballot in order to be a candidate for president of the United States. He toyed with running as a third-party candidate. He toyed with a whole variety of options. But in the end, Donald Trump was smart enough to understand that if you want to be president of the United States, you have to run as a major party candidate. And there are only two major parties in this country, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
Eric agrees with you, says that if there was going to be a third party run, it would have started already.
That's right, 100%. Yeah. And, you know, we had a former vice president of the United States, Henry Wallace, who ran in 1948 as a third party candidate for president. And he had name recognition. He'd been Secretary of Agriculture, Vice President, Secretary of Commerce. He had the backing of the far left of the Democratic Party, and yes, the then relatively well-organized Communist Party in America, although he was not a communist. And he couldn't get on the ballot in a state like Illinois. Well, the minute you can't get on a ballot in a major state where you need the electoral votes to have any strength at all, and Wallace, in the end, didn't win a single electoral vote. In contrast, in 1948, Strom Thurmond, running as the states' rights candidate, running as a regional candidate, got 39 electoral votes, all from the South. He didn't get enough votes to throw the election to the House of Representatives. And the closest we came to that in recent years was George Wallace, who in 1968 hoped to be able to throw the election into the House of Representatives. He didn't have the strength to do it. And you know why? He made a strategic mistake. He took Curtis LeMay as his running mate. Remember General LeMay saying using atomic bombs might not be a bad thing to win a war? And that was the end of the Wallace candidacy. He went from 25% of the vote nationally in terms of polls down to what he ultimately got was about 12%, I think. But the point that I'm making to you is a third-party candidacy in this country is virtually impossible. What has to happen for the Democrats and the Republicans, in my judgment, is when Biden and Trump are history. And no matter what happens after 2024, they will be history. That is to say, they won't be able to run for another term, either one of them. Then the parties open up. And all of a sudden, you'll have a struggle for the soul of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And both have factions within them. Yeah. And then you might have a rebirth of the party system in this country. Right now, the political party system or the convention system is a dead duck. And, because I'm a little nuts and I'm willing to concede that publicly with you, I can tell you that the most interesting thing for me would be if something happened to Biden and something happened to Trump before the conventions, and the conventions had to make a different choice. Then they would be forced to really begin to tackle this. But otherwise, we're going to have to wait until 2025 and beyond. I have to tell you, there's an old story in politics, and that is that when one campaign ends, the next campaign begins.
Of course. Well, let us shift from national politics to, I guess it's kind of national, but more local. So yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom shows up in Oakland. Now, he's already said he's going to direct 120 CHP officers to what is an out of control crime issue, especially along the corridor of Hagenberger. We've seen In-N-Out, they're shutting down. Denny's, they're out, they're gone. The gas stations along Hagenberger are such a violent, I wouldn't say even unpredictable. It's very predictable that if you stop at a gas station along Hagenberger Road, your chances really rise that something bad is going to happen to you or you're going to get something stolen. So much so that the rental car agencies at Oakland Airport are saying, don't stop along Hagenberger and refill your car. Go do it somewhere else, right? Huge problem. So Governor Gavin Newsom says, I'm going to direct 120 CHP officers. And yesterday, he also says, I'm going to deploy attorneys to Oakland to increase prosecutions in this city. He's trying to attack crime in Oakland by sending the police, by sending attorneys to prosecute criminals who are caught, because it's such a horrible problem. Does it signify a failure of Oakland's leadership when the governor has to step in and go, all right, let's clean this place up?
I'm not going to be critical of the leadership. I'm simply going to say Oakland is dysfunctional as a city. It has been for years. You can see it on so many levels. And so is it then the responsibility of the state of California to step in to help that municipality recover? And the answer is yes. But in the end, all politics is local. It means that Oakland will have to redefine, redesign, reemerge as a city that can function. I had hopes for Oakland when Jerry Brown was mayor. Very few people remember that after he left the governorship, the first time, Jerry Brown became the mayor of Oakland. And Oakland seemed to pick up in those days, but it isn't picking up today. No. And that means Oakland's leadership is going to have to be reshuffled. We're going to have to see what happens. I watched the debate over the Middle East that took place in the Oakland City Council, and we saw there the full dysfunctionality of Oakland politics.
Yeah.
And so my answer is 3 cheers for Gavin Newsom. He's got his hands full. A lot of people talk about his running for president. He's not going to run for president in 2024. That's very clear, which means he has 2 more years in order to establish a record in California, including a place like Oakland, which he can present to the American people and say, look, it was a difficult situation. I tackled it. Things were better because I did. And I think that's what Gavin Newsom is doing. He's building a record which will allow him to have a national campaign if circumstances are such that he can in 2028 or even 2032.
So he's got attorneys general from the California Department of Justice, attorneys from the California National Guard to be deployed in Oakland and Alameda County as part of what is a partnership between the Alameda County DA's office and California law enforcement agencies. Their whole point, they say, the governor's office says, is to increase prosecutions of violent crimes and prosecutions for property crimes, serious drug-related crimes, retail theft, and auto burglaries. Now, the DA in Alameda County is under threat of recall. That's Pamela Price.
That's
right.
Correct.
And she's accused of going really soft on these criminals and being part of the problem here. But she says, I welcome support from the governor in this fight against organized retail crime and the scourge of fentanyl in our community. So she's assigning one of the DAs to represent the DA's office in the partnership. Do you feel like when they get in there and she really has to work with these people who come in and are told, listen, we're fighting crime. Don't go, easy on people. We're really trying to get these folks off the streets that are causing trouble. That might go against what she's trying to do, and there might be some pushback.
There might be pushback, but she doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
If she doesn't proceed to cooperate with the governor, she's finished politically. If she does, at least she's given it a shot. And it's interesting, Kim, even people on the left who are theoretically anti-police, whatever that means, understands that without a strong police presence, without, if you'll pardon an expression, law and order, that a community can't function. And so I have great faith that the people of Oakland will come together and do what they can. By the way, it's not just the city, it's the schools in Oakland which are facing a crisis. It's on so many different levels. Oakland, I have one place in Oakland that I love, Fairyland.
Yeah.
I go to Fairyland, I feel, as I did when I was a kid, that Oakland was an open city, but it's changed. And so I don't think you can create a fantasy about Oakland, which is what Fairyland really is. It's a fantasy for children. But you have to be able to build constructively. The same thing applies in San Francisco. We are going to have a race for mayor of San Francisco later this year. And already there are serious questions about functionality versus dysfunctionality. So all of these questions in municipalities are going to be more and more critical. Oakland is a test case for the governor. And remember, this is a man who was the mayor of San Francisco, who was lieutenant governor of California. He's a man who has a lot of experience in local questions. Let's see if he can help.
Let's listen to see what he had to say to KTVU yesterday.
Do you agree with
How
that?
about common sense? It's not tougher on common, it's keeping people safe. People can't live with feeling terrorized by the fact their car's been broken into 4, 5, 6 times. Can't live like that. Can't expect a small business person to put everything on the line, take risks, and have new beginnings investing in Oakland if they feel like their place is going to be robbed or their customers are scared to death to lock their car and walk in at night or into a restaurant. It's not acceptable. Period. Full stop. So it's not being tough on crime. It's just doing what we can to support local government. I'm not the mayor of California. It's not an excuse. We have the CHP. They're limited in their operations. We have the National Guard. They're more limited in their operations. So localism remains determinative. The work the mayor and the county are doing are foundational in this effort. But right now, we all can do more to work together, and we're just incrementally building that partnership, and that's what we are advancing this week.
You have lawmakers that are lifting up the city of Oakland. When you have people that are frustrated, like you described, that are tired of their cars getting broken into, they point to the chief situation, they point to the mayor. What do you tell those people?
I got 10 fingers. None of them are pointing in any direction. All of us are in this together. I'm not interested in who's to blame. I want to solve this problem. I mean, we can make a point or we can make a difference. I want to make a difference. I've been listening to everybody pointing fingers, pointing past people, saying coulda, shoulda, woulda, could do this, do that, talk about the old days, need more of this, less of that. Just had it. Want everyone to work together. Let's figure this out. It's both and. It's not law enforcement exclusively. It's not a war on, drugs approach from the old construct of the 80s. But it is more enforcement and accountability, because there needs to be accountability. People need to know if you put a gun to the head of someone, you're going to be held to account. You're terrorizing that person. The rest of their life, they're going to be impacted by that. That's a violent crime from my humble perspective. You break into someone's car, the vulnerability, I've had that happen. We've all had that happen. And that's a statement in and of itself, that so many of us have had that happen. You feel vulnerable. It's not just what you lost. You feel a lost sense of safety. Small businesses, you put everything on your line. Everything, your family, your future. And you lose it in one organized theft. So I want accountability and I want community building at the same time. And it's not either or.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of what he had to say yesterday. And I think in these moments, he comes out shining.
Oh, I agree. This was a great statement by Gavin. He rose to the moment. He's absolutely right. It's what I mentioned earlier, and I hadn't heard his comments, but it's absolutely true. You've got to get Oakland mobilized. The governor can only do so much. But the fact that he spoke so eloquently, so clearly, and so powerfully in such a compelling fashion is absolutely the correct thing to do. 3 cheers for Gavin Newsom on this one.
Absolutely.
Oh, by the
John,
way, you know that the
yes.
former chief
Yes.
is now suing the city of Oakland
I
for
saw that.
wrongfully dismissing him. And I
Absolutely.
interviewed him several times on KGO. I think you did too.
Yeah,
Nikki
he's a
did.
nice guy.
And so that's another scandal.
Yeah.
They haven't been able to hold on to a police chief, for heaven's sake. Morale in the police department is rock bottom, and that is not a way to run a city.
Before I let you go, because I've really kept you way longer than I have my allotted John Rothman time, but I always seem to kind of hold on to you close to my heart. We did get a super chat from Bongo Shaftesbury 1. Thank you for the $10 super sticker here on the Nikki Maduro Show to help us keep the lights on. Bongo writes, by splitting his vote between two candidates he believes are terrible, Christie is a non-factor. All the valid criticism of President Biden is coming from the left wing. Dem utilitarians must prevail, he writes.
Look, Chris Christie's ability to impact our politics is marginal. He's a former governor. He did not have any traction in the Republican Party, but at least he's a voice. The same thing will be said about Governor Sununu in New Hampshire, who's about to go out of office.
Yeah.
What does he do? He's a responsible Republican, theoretically. When all of the dust is settled, the Republican Party is going to have to reconstitute itself. It's going to have to decide on what direction it wants to go in. This is not the first time the Republican Party has come into this situation. And I'm sure that over the course of the next several years, Kim, you and I together, along with Nikki and Mark Thompson and all of those who work with us, will be debating and discussing this great question. I am simply grateful that we have the forum here, and I urge everybody to support the Nikki Maduro program, as you should support Mark Thompson and as you should support Kim McAllister, as we all do. And I want to point out, I'm not compensated for the appearances that I do
Not at all.
on these programs. I do it because I sincerely believe that we need this kind of expression. And so 3 cheers for Nikki, for Kim, for Mark, and for all of you who are offering a super sticker or a contribution. And these are very important moments, and we need to take advantage of them.
John Rothman, huge hugs. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your perspective every week, and I'm so grateful for you coming on both shows and sharing your thoughts with everyone. Thank you.
My pleasure. And see you on Around the Political World with John Rothman.
Around the Political World with John Rothman, the podcast, 10 minutes every morning, John's political take on the world, and check it out. Around the Political World with John Rothman. Just search for that and it'll all pop up. Thank you, John Rothman. Have the most wonderful 49ers weekend.
Yes, enjoy the Super Bowl.
You
Talk
too.
to you later. Bye.
John Rothman, everybody. Super excited to have him on the show. Around the Political World, something not to be missed. So check it out. Check it out. All right. Let's first of all ask you if you could click the like button and click subscribe as well. Huge thank you. And thank you to everyone who has been participating in the show. I wanted to talk to you about this crazy story out of Los Angeles. Before I do that, I will say that in about 20 minutes, we'll have Tim Sika pop in to talk about the movies of the weekend for people that maybe want to see a movie and catch the Super Bowl, or maybe just want to catch a movie. But there in Los Angeles is a principal on leave after this really bizarre active shooter drill at an elementary school. So this was at Washington Elementary School, it's Washington Elementary School in San Gabriel, the community of San Gabriel in Southern California. And it happened on Wednesday. The principal's name is Nina Denson. She just became principal in the fall of 2023. So she's relatively new to the school. She says, actually parents say, that during the lockdown, she was walking around campus pretending to shoot people that she saw using her finger and banging on windows and telling kids, boom, you're dead. Boom, you're dead. If they weren't hiding appropriately, if whatever happened during the drill, a kid wasn't, doing what they were supposed to be doing, she finger shot them and said, boom, you're dead. These are little kids, little ones. We're not talking about high schoolers who maybe could take it a little more, right? One of the children who witnessed the principal doing this was as young as 4 years old. So these are TKers up to 6th grade. The mom said he was really upset. This is of a 1st grader. The one shocking, surprising thing he said as a 6-year-old was, "I'm just really glad none of my friends are dead." This type of drill where the principal rolls around campus using a finger gun, with her own hand, is not part of the district protocol at all. The one of the parents said, "Can you imagine the trauma these children potentially could go through just thinking, 'Oh my God, my friend was killed,' or 'I was told that I died'? It's very upsetting to kids." So the district officials send out an email to the parents of the school saying the conduct of the drill does not appear to have been in line with district protocols or practices. Some people are saying she needs to go. The principal has to go. They don't want her back. They say she doesn't have the trust of the community. It's hard for me to believe that a principal would do this to kids, that you would think that that's psychologically okay. I mean, it's rough enough that in this day and age, they have to go through an active shooter drill. But to then, on top of it, walk around, boom, you're dead. Boom, you're dead. Really? No. After the drill, listen to this. Staff members say Principal Denson made the announcement saying 7 children were dead. That's how many she killed with her finger, right? I mean, her argument may be, and I don't know what her argument is, but I'm thinking, what could her argument possibly be? And she might say something like, well, the only way to keep them truly safe is to really put this, bring the scenario to life and say, if I see you, you're dead type of thing. Like really hit home that they need to hide, that she's protecting them, not hurting them. But in doing these active shooter drills, which I think they have some psychological weight to them anyway, things that most of us didn't have to go through, unless you're a recent graduate, that our kids have to go through, or grandkids, whatever, however. There's a weight to that we didn't have to deal with. Did we have to get under our desks? This is ridiculous. For the nuclear drill, right? Remember that? If the nuclear siren goes off, get under your desk. Yeah, gonna do a lot. And I remember even in high school thinking about nuclear war and being really afraid of it. And it started with the nuclear drill and what to do in the case of a nuclear attack. And just having to think about those things. Now, should kids not have to think about the realities of the day? That's why we have the drill. Of course they should. Of course we should be prepared. But maybe she's taken it a little too far. I would say if it was at my kid's school, I would think that's taking it a little too far. Yeah. Katie, this is in San Gabriel at Washington Elementary in Southern California. Yeah. Murphy writes, I'd be interested to know if this principal has a degree in early childhood education. Sometimes administrators are mediocre teachers who are better working with adults than children. That may be the case. We already know that we've got a shortage of teachers, perhaps a shortage of administrators. I don't know. Yeah, agree, Brian. What the hell was she thinking? Yeah. You remember the nuclear drills? Yeah, we must be of the same vintage. M. Oak says, don't forget you're not supposed to look out the window either. Well, they're not supposed to look out the window in these active shooter drills. So what happens, according to my kids, is you got to find a place to hide. And usually that means sitting down in an area that if you were looking through a classroom window, no one would be able to see you or see your shadow. So the blinds come down and you try to hide. That's what they do. And isn't that enough to say, what are we trying to do to our kids? Just scare the holy hell out of them? Then to have the principal walk around, bang, you're dead. Bang, you're dead. Really? No, I wouldn't want her back either. No. Well, you're making me feel really old now, Liz. She says my mom still remembers those nuclear drills and said how scary it was, and she's 79. Well, I'm not 79, but yes. I'm telling you, in the 80s, it was really scary. Randy says, I get what she was trying to do, just not sure it was a good thing to do. Yeah, if that was the argument, and she hasn't spoken out, but if the argument was, well, I wanted to put them in a real life scenario and show them that if they did what they did during the drill, they would have, been at risk or would have died or whatever. That's one thing. But I think there's a different way to teach kids that they're at risk, or that, they're not putting themselves in the safest place, than doing what she did. And I think they'll always remember that. And I think it's not going to be psychologically healthy for them. Blue Spark asks, do today's kids know to get under the desk to be safe from a nuke? I think not. Maybe for an earthquake. I don't know what the earthquake drill is these days. I'll have to ask my kids. But remember, it was you get under your desk in the case of an earthquake, or in the case of a nuclear attack. What were they thinking? It's saying, we just don't really know. Duck and cover. All that did to kids realizing we're all fixing to die. Absolutely. Yeah. Jim says we were all supposed to know where the bomb shelters were located in our neighborhood. I mean, talk about having to think about things, though, But you want your kid's childhood to be polite, delightful, and there's not the heavy stuff weighing down on them. They don't have to think about these things yet. No, that's not the case. Beth says, yeah, that went on for 30 years. It's unreal. John writes, I remember when I lived in rural Louisiana, we had tornado drills. All of us would get into the hall, sit on the floor along the walls, and put books over our heads. Yeah, because the tornado's not going to pick that book right off your head and flip it around. Crazy. Yeah. Jim says, after seeing film footage of nuclear tests, I was thinking to myself, even as a kid, this is not going to protect us. No, it absolutely isn't. Donald the Maine Coon writes, I saw a cartoon this morning where a presenter was teaching about guns to kids at school and then pulled a gun and said, you're all dead because you don't have a gun. Oh, God. Yikes. That was a cartoon? That's not good. But yeah, I feel like this principle is way off base. Absolutely way off base. I can't even imagine how scary that would be. And these, again, little ones. TK to 6th grade, an elementary school. So 4 years old to what? 11 or 12? No, thank you. Absolutely not. This is a scary situation. You don't point at a kid and say, boom, you're dead. No. Yesterday, Nikki showed us the video of a man snapping those iPhone cords and stealing them right out of an Apple store in the East Bay. Stole, allegedly, 50 iPhones from this East Bay Apple store. Arrested. He was arrested on suspicion of stealing 50 iPhones. And that's not all. Apparently, there are other people who are under arrest for doing something similar. So, the Emeryville Police Department also apparently had an incident. I actually think that did happen in Emeryville, the video we saw yesterday. So they receive a call on Monday just before 10:30 a.m. about the theft at this store, at the Emeryville Apple store on Bay Street in that mall. The man fled in a vehicle with 50 iPhones valued at almost $50,000, $49,230. And it's all based on how much you steal, right? So I don't know if it had risen to 50,000, if there was some other charge he could have faced. But they don't find him there. They do, though, find him. A joint operation between Emeryville and Berkeley Police and the CHP ends in the arrest of 3 people last night, or Wednesday night rather, in connection with a theft from the Berkeley Apple store that took place that morning. One of those under arrest in the Berkeley incident is the same suspect allegedly seen leaving the Emeryville store. So, This is a 22-year-old Berkeley resident detained on suspicion of being involved in multiple Apple Store thefts. He's booked into the Santa Rita jail, faces multiple counts of burglary and grand theft, among other various charges. And it's still an active investigation. So I just wanted to share that at least they got him, because that video is absolutely wild. I mean, really. I don't know how you feel about this story. I'm conflicted. And I will say the use of the N-word is never acceptable. But we have a shortage of police officers, right? We have a shortage of police officers. We can't attract them into this job. And this probationary Oakland police officer, this is a tough one. She was fired for posting racist content on social media, all right? But here's the thing. She's 30 years old. The post of the N-word that she apparently made happened 12 years ago when she was 18. Now, I'm not saying the N-word's ever okay. And should she have been smarter about what she posted on social media? Yes. Should she have even have that word rolling around in her head? No. But you're 18. Come on. And I apologize to 18-year-olds in the crowd with us here, but you're not fully baked yet. You're not really, firing on all cylinders. Dumb stuff you do when you're 18, whatever it may be. Think back to when you're 18. Did you do something stupid? I did. I can tell you absolutely I did stupid stuff. And thank goodness social media wasn't around back then, right? Did I use the N-word? Never. Never. But I did other dumb stuff that if you knew, you'd be like, Kim, really? I once... Don't judge me. It was a long time ago. I once somehow got involved in a race on Highway 101. This guy just kept looking at me and like revving his engine because I was driving a really fast Mustang. And I don't know how we got into this thing that I got pulled over and I got a big ticket. That was the dumbest, probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done. Stupid. I was a stupid kid, right? I'm surprised my parents didn't take my car away. So this woman uses the N-word when she's 18. And a local media outlet shows Oakland Police Department this Facebook post, or more than one, from more than a decade ago, where she uses the N-word. And because she's a probationary officer, it was very easy for her to be fired, and that's it. And Oakland police, rightly so, say racism and bigotry are completely contrary to core values, and discrimination and hate speech will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Oakland police, they say, is dedicated to upholding the highest standards of integrity and accountability. And there's, some will say, well, why didn't they go back and scour her social media before they hired her? Why didn't they vet her properly? She's going to be a cop. What she does is affecting people. They say OPD is investigating our hiring and screening procedures to ensure the values of potential employees are in alignment with the city and the police department. By the way, this woman's name is Jocelyn Chang Newman, and she looks like, she doesn't look African American, but looks like a woman of color. All right, I'll put a picture up of her. But I feel like calling out something that she did as a dumb kid at age 18 maybe would rise to the level of bringing her in and having a psychologist sit down with her and say, hey, listen, tell me your opinion on this race or that race, or let's talk about racism, or let's talk about your feelings about race. You're going to be put in a lot of positions as a police officer where you're dealing with people of all ethnic backgrounds, and we need to make sure that you're able to handle it appropriately, that you treat all people as people, that you don't walk into this department with biases. So, Jocelyn's fired. Do you think she should have been? Do you think going back to when somebody was 18 years old that they should have. Now, it's different if there was a criminal record and she did something, you know, I don't know, murdered someone, hurt someone, what have you, that would preclude her from being a police officer. And I don't want racist police officers rolling around in Oakland or anywhere else. But it seems like a lot to have a stupid Facebook post from when you were 18 years old and you're now 30 affect your employment. Randy says no. She shouldn't have been fired for this. Yeah. Donald giving me some love. Way back in the 80s in Michigan, I raced my old Dodge Monaco against a friend in his car. Got up to 100 miles an hour. I got scared and stopped. Yeah. Oh, we're talking about racing. Got it. What did I open up? John says, my father got into a race with a guy on a country road. He was going really slow on a 2-lane road. My father tried to pass and they hit the gas. My father raced him as won. I was scared, of course. Yeah, it's a stupid thing to do. We shouldn't be doing that. Beth got clocked going 100 miles an hour. The cop said 90 and wrote 80 on the ticket, went to court and fessed up to it. Thank goodness. That was nice of him to do. Because I think if it's 100, it kicks into some other issues with your insurance and everything else. Yeah. Hula Steph, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Really, really appreciate it. Also want to thank Marilyn, who jumped in with a $5 super sticker. And of course, Bongo Shaftesbury won with a $10 super sticker. Thank you guys so much for contributing to the show. Nikki and I really both appreciate that very much. So I feel like this woman, while it was wrong what she wrote when she was 18, at some point we have to move on and figure out who the person is now. Because while I'm the same person, I'm changed a lot since then, right? I'm smarter, I'm wiser. I'm not the same person at age 18 that I am at age 30 or age 40 or age 45, or maybe even age 50, if you know what I'm saying. Heather writes, I'm 46 and I'm still questionable. In a wonderful way, though, Heather, in a wonderful way. M. Oak writes, yeah, people grow and change with age. No way she should have been fired. No way. But does the city of Oakland, did the Oakland Police Department have any choice, really? Yeah. That's crazy. Heather says, yeah, I was an idiot when I was 18. Even at 28, I was a dingbat. I doubt you were a dingbat. But, yeah, I'm just saying, it seems a lot to go back that far. A little Florida this morning on the Nikki Maduro show. Did you see what happened in Half Moon Bay? This, I hope I'm not scooping a Friday Fabulous Florida story, but this Florida man was arrested after a stolen plane made an emergency landing on the beach at Half Moon Bay. This happened yesterday afternoon. A man was arrested for allegedly stealing this plane, and then I would say rather expertly, set it down. And the city of San Mateo gets out of the plane, starts walking down the beach. It's a single-engine American Champion Citabria 15. This man walks down the beach, just leaves the plane on the beach, and he's arrested about 20 minutes later. He is Luis Gustavo Ares, a 50-year-old man from Miami-Dade County, taken into custody. That plane apparently stolen from the Palo Alto airport. It's just wild, the things people do. I'm telling you. Did you see the story about this? This is horrible. This is another one. This girl that was misidentified as trans. Okay. This happened. I don't know if I have the story. So this girl is 16 and she's on a sports team at her high school. And a reporter identifies her as trans and starts talking about, trans people in sports and raises the whole issue. Well, here's the problem. She isn't trans. So first of all, you've taken a 16-year-old girl who's probably tall, right? And has feelings about that and misgivings about herself anyway, because girls at that age are, what's wrong with me? Whatever. So you've taken a 16-year-old girl and there's nothing wrong with being trans, but when you're a 16-year-old girl already worried about your appearance and worried about what people think of you and having all this pressure on you about who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to look, and then someone says that, it can be very, very embarrassing. So that's horrible. And it's said on Facebook. So she doesn't have Facebook, but her parents have to sit her down and tell her this. It's just an ugly moment where why you would think that you need to comment on a high school student's appearance, whether they were trans or whether they weren't trans, honestly, is just beyond comprehension. It just sucks. Yeah. Mill Valley has approved affordable housing. The first time they've done this in 30 years. These communities that don't want the affordable housing options, or, they don't want the riffraff moving in, they are having to, for the first time, bend to state law and say, all right, we're going to do it. Mill Valley approving a 100% affordable housing development. Again, the first time this has happened in this Marin County town in 30 years. It's a 4-story building. 44 units will be here. 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The rents are expected to be from $978 a month to $2,900 a month. And they are reserved for low-income residents. Listen to low income in Marin. You're making between $40,000 and $130,000 a year. That qualifies you as low income in Marin County. And it's true. It's 100% true. It is called Bayfront Terraces. It'll be on Hamilton Drive. The Mill Valley city officials say they were successful in the 70s, 80s, and 90s building affordable housing, but they lagged. And so now they have this 100% affordable housing development in Mill Valley. And with that, they meet the requirements. There's another housing project I wanted to just discuss before we get to Timsika. This one has a combination of market rate and low income affordable housing and homeless people housing, transitional housing, all in one building. It's an interesting concept. And I don't know if you're going to sell a lot of the full priced units, in a building where you have transitional housing for homeless people. Because if I'm going to spend however much one of these condos, and it's in San Jose, so it's got to be expensive, right? Say it's, I don't know, $1.2 million for a condo in San Jose. Not that I have $1.2 million to spend, but had I $1.2 million, and were I going to buy a house in San Jose or a condo, would I choose to buy it in the building where there's transitional housing and there might be people around that are, that's followed by crime? I don't know. This is a site in San Jose's theater district that will be transformed into a development of regular condos, but also units for homeless. They're calling this an innovative, unique idea, the first of its kind in California. A mixed income development. Mayor Matt Mahan of San Jose saying historically, when government tried to address poverty, they built large projects that were all folks clustered together of the same income level. Well, of course, because if it costs a certain amount, then people of that income level are the ones that can afford to live there, right? But he said that outcomes didn't necessarily improve for those people. It was great that people were housed, but there were a lot of other challenges. So when this project is finished, there will be 500 units. 360 of them will be market rate condos, 68 will be affordable homes, and 72 will be designated as permanent supportive housing for people that were once living on the street. They say getting people into a mixed income community with access to jobs and transit, having neighbors with different jobs, that gets better outcomes. Mayor Mahan says the data is clear. Children who grew up in mixed income communities, even if they were from lower income backgrounds, have more opportunities and they do better. Interesting. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, it could be wonderful, and he could be right. And this could be a great thing to show people, this is how you could be living. This is how, but did the people that are living in the higher end units, do they want to have that? Or when you have $1.2 million or whatever it is to spend, do you want to kind of raise yourself out of this area where you don't have to deal with crime or, people vaping on the street in front of your condo, smoking pot? I don't know. We'll see how this is. Well, before we get to Tim Sika, lastly, I wanted to tell you there's an initiative in Hawaii to make the shaka the official state gesture. Isn't it already, though? It seems to me. They said the spirit of aloha is really enshrined in this particular gesture. But the bill that they have going through the Hawaiian legislature aims to share the pride of Hawaii by claiming the shaka. If it passes, it would be the first state to officialize a state gesture. What's the state gesture of California? The bird? I don't know. All right, let's bring on Tim Sika. He joins us now with the look at movies. I don't know if anybody's watching movies this weekend. Everyone's watching the Super Bowl, my friend.
I know everybody's into the Super Bowl. Yeah. So, well, but anyway, there's a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's a bunch of movies opening this week for those that may not be as much into football. I know that sounds like heresy, but there are. I know a lot of people that aren't really, going to watch the Super Bowl. But anyway,
there's something for everybody, right?
Something for everybody. That's right.
Yeah.
And now we get to talk movies with Kim McAllister, which is yay. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. So what is the first offering that you have for us today, sir?
I have a movie called Lisa Frankenstein.
Oh.
Okay. It kind of reminded me, there was this Nicholas Hoult movie that came out in 2013 called Warm Bodies. It was like a zombie movie. That's what this movie kind of reminded me of. It wasn't as good as Warm Bodies, and it wasn't a zombie movie, but it kind of reminded me of that because of, the way the actors were going about the roles and stuff. But anyway, this is a horror comedy written by Diablo Cody, who wrote Juno. She's probably best known for Juno.
I really like that movie a lot.
Yeah, it is a good movie. Yeah. Anyway, and it was inspired by or loosely based on Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, the 1818 novel Frankenstein, and it's the story of this misunderstood teenage goth girl played by Catherine Newton, who reanimates. I guess reanimates is the word. Victorian era corpse. And works to make that corpse into the man of her dreams, right?
Oh, well, see, there's not enough of those to go around. So
yeah, right.
Now
right.
I'm on board. Okay.
Okay, it can happen. Yeah, and Cole Sprouse plays the Frankenstein creature, whose dialogue is like pretty much consists of various grunts and squeaks and squawks. I would have been fun to ask him, like, hey, I bet when you looked at this script, you thought, wow, I don't have any lines to memorize because all I have to do is grunt. Anyway. It's a kind of a stylish and offbeat and a kind of cute, but also decidedly very weird sci-fi rom-com. Our last movie on the list this week is also a sci-fi rom-com, and we'll get to that. But Lisa Frankenstein, I guess it works on its own terms. It's a kind of a goth feminist take on the Frankenstein tale. I think it's a kind of an ideal movie for teenage girls, maybe like high schoolers, like maybe like juniors and seniors. I think would really particularly like this because the characters are of that age too. But truthfully, for me, it was kind of forgettable. I mean, the energy of it is kind of weird too. I like movies with weird energy. But this one lacks a specific type of energy that would have made it more memorable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I don't feel that it's particularly well directed. Zelda Williams is the director. Another female-led movie. Yay, that's a good thing. Right. But it lacks a directorial stamp, which I think hurts it. And despite the film's kind of neat ideas in feminist politics, it just kind of laid there. At least it laid there for me. It'll be interesting to see how it does at the box office, but I don't know. There you have it. Not much more to say about Lisa Frankenstein.
I will tell you that Nikki watched what is the movie with the weird kind of Frankenstein movie, Precious something, nominated for Academy Awards, and loved it.
Poor Things. You mean Poor Things?
Poor Things, not Precious
Yeah,
Things. Yeah, Poor Things.
Yeah, no, that was
She
that was
loved
close.
that, and
Yeah.
I would have thought this Lisa Frankenstein would be up Nikki's alley, but you're saying no, you don't recommend.
Well, I don't, but I mean,
Okay.
maybe Nikki, but it really, I mean, it's not a tenth as good as Poor Things. I mean, Poor Things had a lot of great energy, and it was a really weird story, and there was no other movie I have ever seen in my life that looked or felt like Poor Things.
Yeah.
So it's a good one. It's worth seeing just for Emma Stone's performance. I mean, that's just amazing. Yeah.
Let's move to this one. This is Drive Away Dolls.
Yes, this is another feminist romp, directed by a Coen brother, not the Coen brothers, but one half of that team, Ethan Coen, and it was written by his wife, Tricia Cook. And this one's a little better than Lisa Frankenstein. I thought so. Its original title was Drive Away Dykes. And that title is actually paid homage to later in the film. But the title Drive Away Dykes was changed to Drive Away Dolls because apparently after doing some market research, I guess it was concluded that title would not be able to go up on a lot of theater marquees, especially the ones in Middle America, right? Yeah. Nobody would. Yeah. So anyway, so this is a kind of a full-blown lesbian comedy crime caper. Okay. It stars Margaret Qualley as this Texas exuberant, well-meaning, if sometimes heedless ball of energy kind of gal who was really into sex. Geraldine Viswanathan, Australian actress who plays her prim, proper, and very opposite in character platonic friend she is trying to get laid on this road trip, and the wonderful Beanie Feldstein who plays this tough, jilted, and very pissed off cop named Suki, with whom you never want to mess. You just don't. Anyway, so this is basically a road trip movie where these gals, they get mixed up with a bunch of criminals who are trying to retrieve this mysterious briefcase that they have to return to a family values right-wing senator, played by Matt Damon. So you kind of know where that's going. Yeah. And you know, Kim, it's funny to kind of sum this up without having to give away too much plot. I recently interviewed the cast of the film, and the interviews took place at the Good Vibrations Antique Vibrator Museum in San Francisco. Where, sex toys and whatever, sexual what have yous are on full display. Yeah. And that really, it was an inspiration to hold these interviews there because, the backdrop was perfect. All these walls of colored dildos. Anyway, so this is I found this fun. I found it sex positive. It's crazy, insane, wackadoodle, gonzo, nuts kind of a movie. Very contemporary, and yet it's also like a throwback of sorts to 60s drive-in B movies at the same time. It's also an offbeat take on the road trip movie genre. Lots of visits to and stops at lesbian bars on the road trip from Texas to Florida. But it's clear that all the people that made this movie were very serious about making a movie that didn't take itself too seriously, and I think that's why it worked so well. So I recommend it. Drive Away Dolls is the name of the movie again. It opens today in theaters.
Let's talk about Suncoast, this one on Hulu.
Yes, this is a movie that is going straight to VOD, to Hulu.
Uh-oh. Does that mean it's bad?
No, well, that's too bad that it is, because it's a good movie. It's a coming-of-age drama. It's about this mother and daughter. Laura Linney plays the mother, and she's great. I love Laura Linney. She's such a great actress. And her teenage daughter is played by Nico Parker. What's her name? Thandie Wee Newton's daughter, in actual fact. And anyway, it's about the two of them caregiving a family member, a teenage boy who has brain cancer, who's unable to speak or communicate anymore, who is also blind, and who basically requires 24-hour around-the-clock care. And it's about the stress that situation has upon the mother and daughter and their relationship to each other. It was written and directed by this gal named Laura Chin. Yay, another female directed movie.
Yeah.
And apparently was semi-autobiographical, which is one of the reasons I think it ultimately works. There are some subplots in it. Like there's one with Woody Harrelson, who plays this right to life activist. Terry Schiavo also plays into the plot of the movie, the real life Terry Schiavo. But that I don't think these subplots necessarily need to be there, but the film ultimately works because the director based the story on, I think, what she experienced, and then she wrote about it, and that gave the film a kind of a strong emotional believability. And I think to all the compassionate souls out there who are caregivers, and that at some point maybe they're thinking, God, I just don't know how I can go on doing this. It's such an energy drain. This is a film they should definitely see because it reminds you of this notion of the perceived hell that you may be going through, helping an individual on the level of 24-hour caregiving, but that, it's actually some sort of gift in disguise that you're doing that may not become apparent until way later. And the climax is definitely one that requires Kleenex. I mean, the climax is really beautiful. Anyway, Suncoast is the name of the hospice facility that the boy is sent to. So yeah, good movie, and it's online now. It's on Hulu as of today. And despite some of the script flaws, it's still a good movie with a really, really great performances and a strong heart. A strong emotional core, and that's why I'm recommending it. It'll really get to you in a good way.
Why do they do this? Why do they put movies right to
streaming
services? I mean, what does that say about the movie? Anything?
Well, generally, I mean, the conventional wisdom is if it goes straight to, quote unquote, straight to video, that it's not so good.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, things are changing constantly in the marketing. I just experienced some stuff recently that just with some representatives of a movie that I just thought, what on earth are you even talking about? I've been doing this for 20 years and it's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But there's all these new directives every day. I think sometimes it's a last minute decision that they make. I mean, the Suncoast movie is really good, but maybe because a lot of movies are being released this weekend, maybe they thought that the Super Bowl would put a crimp in a serious coming of age drama. I don't know, but it doesn't always mean that the movies are bad. Like in the case of Suncoast, it's actually it's a positive thing because people can just go to Hulu and watch it, and I recommend that they do. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did. The Monk and the Gun.
Yeah, this is another good movie. I love movies like this that work on all these levels. It's a comedy, it's a satire of sorts, and it's also this message movie in the good sense of the meaning of that phrase, and I'll try to explain that. But the story of The Monk and the Gun, it takes place in 2006 in Bhutan, where there was a change coming in the country. TV and the internet have finally arrived to this far off country, and the king has decided to abdicate, and he wants to give as a gift to his people a democracy. So now the people can choose their own leader, but the people have never lived under a democratic system, right? So now it's up to the government there to teach the people of Bhutan how to do a democracy. So a couple of people from outside are brought in to hold these mock elections to show the people how to vote, how to register to vote, and then how to cast their ballots. And there's lots of humor in that, trying to explain elections to people who have no idea what they are and that are used to living in a country where, the monarchy is what you look up to. So this is basically two stories. It's about the introduction of democracy to a culture, the last really on this planet to be modernized and to be connected to the internet. I think in 2006, Bhutan was connected to the internet, and I think 2 years later, in March, they held their first official democratic election. Anyway, it's about that. So it's that story, and then concurrently, it's about this monk, this traditional holy man, who, in response to all these changes going on in his country, orders or requests a young monk of his, like an acolyte of his, to obtain for him a couple of guns before the full moon arrives in order to quote unquote make right what is going on in his country.
Oh.
So there's suspense in watching this. You're going, what on earth can this holy man want with two guns for a ceremony he wants to conduct to make right what is happening in his country?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's a wonderful film that dramatizes very plainly and is a running commentary upon the messiness of a democratic system, voting, elections, running for political office, the impact of technology on an unsuspecting culture, and gun culture, specifically America's obsession with firearms. I think there's a line in the movie where they said, oh yeah, America, isn't that country where they have more firearms than actual citizens?
That's us.
Hey, that's got that. So I highly recommend this movie. It's funny and it raises a lot of questions pertinent to what's going on in the world right now. Really good. Really good.
And the gun. Okay,
The Monk
cool.
and the Gun. Isn't that a great title?
It is.
I was when I went, oh, The Monk and the Gun. I got to see that. I got to see it just for the title alone. But it also turned out to be a really terrific movie. Yeah.
And this is in theaters?
In theaters, yeah.
Okay. Let's move to this one. I hope I have the right picture. Out of Darkness.
I think that is the right picture.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, this is another good movie. Out of Darkness. This is a movie you were talking about, like, why do films go to Hulu and why. This is one that apparently has been in the can for 2 years and was originally titled The Origin. Maybe the distributors were unsure how to market it or release it to the public, but it's out there now. It's opening in theaters today, and it's a dark drama. It's a prehistoric tale, actually a kind of. Did you see Predator, Kim, the horror movie Predator? Okay, this is a kind of Predator-influenced horror movie, too, about this group of 6 people living 45,000 years ago. The movie starts with the thing on screen saying 45,000 years ago. They're on this planet. They're trying to survive. And this group of 6 is composed of an elderly man, his son, who is the official head of the tribe, the son's brother, the son's pregnant wife, the son's own preteen son, and this young woman they picked up along the way, referred to as the Stray. And one day, to compound all of the groups, this groups of 6's struggles to survive, they find themselves being preyed upon by some unknown creature, aptly referred to as a monster. And this was probably my favorite film of the week that I saw this week. It's the directorial debut of this British newcomer named Andrew Cumming. And in addition to being just a rattling good horror tale, it's richly philosophical. It's about the importance of stories and the power of storytelling. It's a powerful tale of how we really are at the core all alike. Essentially, when it comes right down to it, despite our differences, we're pretty much the same, and that we are all just people basically wanting the same things, right? Yeah. But because of our fears, because of our hatreds, because of our ignorance, because of our anger, that truth about human existence becomes obscure to the point where we'd rather kill and destroy than embrace that humanity that's in all of us. And the more I think about this movie, and the more I'm just saying this stuff to you, the more I like it, and the more I think is actually there beneath the surface of this rattling good, tense horror movie. It's powerful, it's nerve-wracking, it's an impressive directorial debut, it's very compelling. It's essentially a horror movie. There's lots of jump scares. It's very visual. The sound design and the music score are superb. And it's rare when a movie is this entertaining, but leaves you with so much to think about. It's like a combination sock to the brain and to our collective and individual need to be entertained.
It's a total package, huh?
It's a terrific movie. Yeah, it's called Out of Darkness, and I highly, highly recommend it.
Do we have gore in this one? Is it like
yucky?
Oh.
Well, there's more like effects of gore than actual gore, but the effects like somebody will disappear and then you'll hear these screams and then we see the results of this attack from this monster and they ain't pretty.
Yeah.
But it's I don't like those movies either, and I tend to just I look away or I just close, block my ears. But this one wasn't that bad.
Okay.
All things being relative, I think we're just all becoming desensitized to a lot of this stuff.
All right, last movie you've got for us is Molly and Max in the Future.
Yeah, this is the other sci-fi rom-com that our third rom-com of the week that I made reference to earlier. It's about 3 rom-coms, Kim, for the week. You have your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can watch them before the Super Bowl, or after.
Sure.
Yeah, I know you're going to watch the Super Bowl, though, right?
I probably am going to have it on.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to be reading a book at the same time.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It's always good to have it on because, just so you know what's going on. Yeah, I agree. That's probably what I'm going to have in my house, too. Anyway, okay, Molly and Max in the Future. It's a science fiction rom-com. It's about this man and woman whose, personal orbits keep colliding over the course of 12 years. 4 planets, 3 dimensions, and 1 space sex cult. Okay. Yeah. What is this movie? It's a comic booky, cartoony, character-driven romance, which to me at times seemed like a live-action Futurama. Have you ever seen that animated series on Fox called Futurama? Anyway, that's what this is like. But it's a little more intellectual than that. It's got smart and snappy dialogue. It pokes fun at how in relationships we maybe sometimes just overthink them to the point where we just, talk ourselves out of them. How relationships relate to quantum mechanics. It pokes fun at all the quote unquote meaning we place on just things in general. It pokes fun at the impermanence of life, the meaning of happiness. It pokes fun at therapists and therapy and the nature of the only universal constant, right? Which is change. That's really all we know about life for certain, right? That all things change. We can observe that. We see it. We notice it. We look at its impact on us. The performances are good. I think the film could have used stars. There's no stars in the movie. It's all good acting, good performances. But I think if this movie had stars, it would probably be making a bigger splash at the box office. This one opens in theaters today. But it's still a fun romp. And as far as rom-coms go, there's really no other like it. We were talking about Poor Things being, unlike any movie we've ever seen. This is unlike any rom-com I have ever seen. It's colorfully designed. And it makes some astute observations on our current everyday lives and relationships and how we conduct relationships. It's a good movie, Molly and Max in the Future. Great
title. It's interesting because I wouldn't have thought that from the movie poster and the name of the movie.
Yeah.
I would have thought it was
cheesy.
A Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle kind of movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks kind of cheesy, but I love the dialogue, and I like, it's one of these movies that has sort of like screwball comedy delivered dialogue, meaning very fast. It's very quippy. Their comebacks are really smart. Maybe, people really don't talk like that in real life, but if you go with that conceit, it works. And I liked it. I like smart, snappy movies and a good rom-com. I don't like all rom-coms. I'm not as forgiving as you are, Kim.
It's very true. It's very true. Yeah. But I like that you like this one. Okay, so I would never have put it on my list, but I'm going to.
The opening will grab you. It's like you're watching this and you're going, "What is this?" It's like a Star Wars movie. And then there's this collision with this guy and his like space car, and then he kind of almost slams up against her windshield, and then that starts the relationship. It's crazy, but I'm going, this works. This shouldn't work. It seems like it's going to be really stupid, but immediately when they start talking and you go, oh no, there's more here than meets the eye.
So recapping, Lisa Frankenstein, a thumbs down from the Tim Sika department.
Yeah, well, I would say like so rather than but a so
thumb even.
Yeah,
okay.
thumb even, yeah.
Drive Away Dolls, you liked it. It's a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Suncoast, you liked it. Even though it went right to Hulu, you thought, The Monk and the Gun, you thought it was delightful. You really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Out of Darkness, you loved it.
Yeah.
And Molly and Max in the Future, despite its rom-comness, you're giving it a thumbs up as well.
Yeah. So what is that, 5 out of 6?
That's pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
See?
And I know that if you're giving it a thumbs, a meh, that I'm staying away from it because you don't usually do that.
I know, and I when I do a meh, I'm trying to be fair to the movie. But
I know,
yeah,
but if
yeah,
you give it a meh, it has to really suck, is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know if I'm going to own those words, but yeah, you can see through my tone, right? Yeah.
Tim Sika, thank you for bringing us all the good stuff. I love having you here on Friday. I hope you have the very best weekend.
Oh, thanks, Kim. I love talking to you about movies, and thank you for having me on. Talk to you
Thanks,
next week.
Tim. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, it is almost 11 o'clock and almost time for the Mark Thompson show, and I don't want to be late getting over there, but there was something I did want to show you on the way out the door, and that is, I saw this on Facebook last night. This is from Steven Espanola, who is a Hawaiian musician. He posted this and said, this is the states that support the 49ers versus Kansas City. I don't know if that's true, but I thought that was kind of funny. And because of the Friday food segment from Nikki, I also did want to share with you another little thing I saw. You know I'm not going to cook anything. However, I will show you this on the way out. It's supposed to be a charcuterie. Get it? Charcuterie. If I went to a Super Bowl party and saw this, I don't think I would want to ruin it by eating something off of it. Look at all those cool blueberries as the ocean. Anyway, there's your Friday Florida food segment. That's all I got. Thank you for joining me. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the show today. You are so incredibly appreciated. Marilyn, Bongo, Hula, and then Wes popping in with 5 as well. Thank you. Have a great Super Bowl Sunday. We'll see you on the Mark Thompson show. That is next. Until then, I'll say goodbye with my boy. Here's Jacob. Thanks, you guys. Have a good weekend.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're sprout like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You sprout like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best, and I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.